Welcome to Channel Edge, the podcast where channel leaders share success strategies, best practices, and emerging trends. Brought to you by 360 Insights, the channel success platform.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Channel Edge, 360's Insights View into Everything channel. I'm your host, Stephen Kellum. Very excited today to have Tina Gravel, who is SVP of Channel Alliances at Appgate, joining us. Good morning, Tina.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am. And I'm going to tell folks, we were originally going to go down the path of talking about generating revenue because it's just near and dear to everyone's heart. But as Tina and I were discussing what we're going to talk about, where this might go, International Women's Day just took place on March 8th. And we thought we would go back to some of the basics because you can run programs, you can do these things to drive revenue. But I think what Tina and I are going to talk about is what are some of those base things that you can do in the channel, and maybe even in particular around as a woman in the channel, around emotional intelligence, around leadership, some of these fundamental issues that you can go through that can make you a better channel leader, which ultimately is going to make you have a better channel, which ultimately is going to lead to growth. So we're going to kind of take it down to that base level today. So listeners, we appreciate you joining, and we want to listen to Tina and hear a little bit about her experience as a woman in the channel, and then just as a contributor in the channel as well, regardless of whether women or men, what she's done, what she's learned, how she's making her channel successful. So once again, welcome, Tina.
Thank you for having me.
But before we dive into that, Tina, I thought we could start a little bit with who you are and how you got to where you are, because I've seen you speak quite a lot. So I'm very familiar with your background, but there might be some folks out there that don't know.
Okay. I've been in IT for nearly 30 years. I have been most of the time was spent on the direct side of selling. I've been in the indirect side of selling, running channels and alliances for now. Well, I guess we're getting to the 50-50 mark now, but within 3 years we'll be 50-50. But I've worked for great companies that are now owned by people like SAP and DXC and Verizon and IBM, and it really goes on and on. I've had big jobs, co-CEO, GM, and then I've had direct contributor roles over the years. The direct contributor roles made a lot more money, I can tell you, but that's selling in the big city, right? My path was a little, I would say, not typical, in that I hadn't originally decided. I don't know anybody that graduated when I did that had in their minds to be a salesperson that was in a liberal arts school. That wasn't something that you talked about or anything. And so I was planning, to go to law school, and I was there for a short amount of time. And I was just really lucky to know someone who was smart enough to see something in me and see that selling might be a good fit, and got me involved with selling at Mobile Chemical, which was the plastic bags, right? And it was more of a B2C kind of job. And I knew that I wanted to do B2B. And so I interviewed in a lot of high-tech companies and ended up getting a job at McDonnell Douglas Automation. I came in under the Equal Opportunity Commission's law at the time, which was you had to hire women and minorities. And I was in a sales class where there were very few white males, and those that were there were much more qualified than I was. But I was a scrapper, and I was tenacious, and I wanted to succeed, and so I did. But that's a little about my story. Yeah, and now I'm here. I'm like I'm sort of at the what do you call it, the twilight the twilight of my career now. And people ask me for advice like you are today. And it's a very interesting feeling because for so many years, I was like the child prodigy. I was 28 in a 40 world. And then it seems like overnight, I'm now the advice giver. How'd that happen?
Well, you did something well. Here's what I think it is, and you could tell me and the audience. Look, your passion is what drove me to want to meet you. I saw you speak, and I went up and introduced myself afterwards because I thought it was very powerful. What you outlined. So what makes you so passionate in the channel? It comes across as very legitimate. And sort of what makes you tick in the channel?
I think that you genuinely have to have a love for what you do. Now, I don't mean that I love every aspect of it. There are many things that you and I have spoken of that I do not like in this business, right? But I have a genuine love for many of my partners. I care about them. I love seeing them. I get a kick out of their success. I genuinely have a curiosity about technology, and I'm very proud of my company, and I have a passion about what we do. I think we do it better than anybody else in the world. In fact, I know we do. And so that passion, comes out. I've always been a dramatic and emotional person. And
I would say charismatic. I would say charismatic.
Thank you. Well, I've had to, in truth, there have been times when that passion, and it's funny because in my 20s, the president of McDonnell Douglas and I were talking one day, and something he said, frustrated me, and I started to get choked up, and I said, I don't want to cry, and what he said to me was brilliant because he had daughters. And he said, women cry because they're frustrated or they're angry. I don't think you want to cry because you're feeling sorry for yourself. I think that a lot of times that when you have these emotions, you need to control them because people misunderstand what they mean. And so for me, it has been the last 40 years, 30 something years of managing these emotions, of corralling them into the right place. Because it's wonderful to be on stage and to be able to have charisma and to have passion. It's another thing to be on a one-on-one with your boss and to be overly emotional about something because you have this passion. I think you have to channel it into the right areas. And that's been a life's work for me because for some reason I didn't get that memo when I was 15 or whenever it is that you would normally learn that,
Look, I think that's fascinating. I'm curious, did you ask him what he does when he gets frustrated and angry? I think that's actually, I have daughters, I have a wife, so I'm surrounded by powerful women all the time. I don't know if I've really ever looked at it that way. And that makes a lot of sense, but I'm curious what his thoughts are, what he did.
I will tell you, having been married and having been in a long-term relationship, what they will tell you is that when they are angry or frustrated, they might slam something or they might, show it in a different way. They don't normally cry. Right. You can only tell, yourself how you exhibit anger. I think we're used to the men in the boardroom slamming their hands down. I'm not gonna, right? We're less used to seeing a woman do that. And when we see a woman do that, sometimes it's very unsettling. I have done that, and it has disturbed people so much so that I've gotten somebody saying, you got to control yourself. And I have said, I didn't cry. I did the exact same thing that I've seen a man do. Why do I have to control myself? It's in a different package, and it depends on the topic. It depends on, what is it in response to? Is it a legitimate, measured response? Is it an overreaction, or is it an inappropriate reaction? And maybe at that time, and I can't even remember what it was, but I don't do it anymore. I can't even remember. It might have been an inappropriate reaction to something that aggravated me. And I was trying on, of course, this new way instead of crying, right? Because I learned that from a man, you see, from a mentor. I learned that when he can't get control, this is what he does, right? So many lessons over the years that I've gotten from men, because I haven't had women to that have they've been able to show me, that have been near me, so I could mimic or frame or try on, And anyway, how do we get on this topic?
No, but we need to keep going on this, because look, I think this is fascinating. We can get into the revenue piece in a second, but I think the article that you did, women profiles of women in tech. I think we should talk about this for a second, because International Women's Day is coming up on the 8th. We're going to air this, and we'll probably air this, folks. We'll air this the week after International Women's Day. But you got me thinking of all that, because I'm thinking about if you're in a boardroom, right? And if a woman cries because she's frustrated, it's seen as weakness. And if a man slams the table because he's frustrated, it's seen as power. That doesn't seem very equal to me.
No, it doesn't. But it is what it is. I don't fault anyone for having these perceptions. These are the perceptions that we've grown up with. What I would fault is a company for not helping, for not having an organization or a program to help a woman with their own emotional intelligence and to help them become leaders, strong leaders. I'm fortunate enough to have a boss that works with me. I used to be all about fun and games. Okay. My way of dealing with, instead of breaking things or crying, I then became the clown. All right. That was, I've done it all. I've worn every face you can imagine in trying to figure this out. And so I became the guy that you hung out with. Okay. That happened to look like a woman. And I was silly. I always had the quip. I always had the funny move. And this boss said to me, "Why do you do that? Why do you do that? It takes away your power." And I said, "You're right. I don't know, And I had to look at that. And sometimes it's appropriate. It's just when you do things and when you don't. And because we don't, as women, we haven't had the role models, and we haven't had the mirroring, and we haven't had these things. We've had a lot of at least I, have had a lot of trial and error. Lots. But the good news is that while it may have hurt my career here and there, it hasn't completely cratered me. I have been able to still prevail, still be successful, still help other women to get better. And that is my passion. Women in tech, women to be an advocate for those that can't advocate for themselves.
Okay, I wouldn't say I think totally cratered is a little bit of an extreme. I think you've actually succeeded in many, 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 many ways. So I guess that all depends on the definition there.
No, I guess maybe in certain situations.
You had crater moments.
Yeah, like we all, right?
I was going to say I have lots of crater moments that I would go back and change, that I could have grown up a lot faster. I had someone mentor me, and I cratered in a bunch of stuff. I could be here. And, I agree with that. It's part of it. My life has been, maybe that's why we relate well, is how do I help other people avoid those silly, especially even my children.
Yes. There have been people in my company over the years, whatever company I'm in, that I have seen make similar mistakes that I've made. And I can see them almost like getting passed by, they don't work for me. I have nothing to gain, but I still approach them, men or women, and say, hey, I've noticed this thing. You might want to rethink it. And it's interesting, the response that I get. I don't have to do this with you, but I want to share this with you because I don't want you to bring this somewhere else. I believe as managers, whether they work for you or not, we have a responsibility as leaders within Appgate, let's say, to leave people better than we found them. And as such, if the person that you're reporting to isn't doing it for you, and you as a leader recognize something, then you better say something, in my opinion. Now there is always a way to say it, and there's a way to stay in your own lane and say, can I offer this feedback? And if they don't want it, well, okay, I'm out of here, right? But I do believe that as a leader within this firm, that we all have to work to help everyone be better. And I try to do it through the Women of Appgate, and I try to do it when I observe something that isn't getting fixed. And it's interesting. Sometimes it's well received and sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's you can tell a lot about how somebody was raised by how they take constructive criticism.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a big thing to help people get over. But hey, hold on a second. We're going to change the title of this, and people that are listening, we are getting to revenue. But everything that you're talking about, I think it all ties together because you're talking about emotional intelligence. You're talking about leadership. You talk about authenticity. You're talking about mentorship. I think that I believe those are all foundational elements that help you be successful with your channel, wherever you're connecting. And I think that eventually is going to lead to growth and is going to lead to revenue. I think we're just kind of starting at some of the core premises there.
Well, and there's one more, and I'm gonna call it sponsorship. And for me, sponsorship is actually finding someone in the channel and helping them, raising them up. And we do this in some of our women's organizations through awards, and then sometimes informally. Like there are a few women that I know in several of the agencies, some of these master agencies that have done so well, and then I'm their fan, And so when I hear that they've done something or whatever, I take it upon myself to share the good news. No one asked me to do that. That's just, I'm doing that because I'm thrilled for them. And so to me, that's like sponsoring them to the rest of the world, whether it be follow them on Twitter, whether it be listen to this podcast because they've done it, whether it be read this book because they've read, or a blog. I don't know what it is, but I also want to sponsor them on their way up. And whether that be within your own company or whether that be a channel partner who's somewhere else, I think as women, we're all of the same cause, and we haven't done enough to help each other. And so that is a very big thing with me as well, that I talk about all the time, that we're warriors. We have this war. It's not, we don't have to put horns on and a fur bikini and storm the Capitol, but we need to understand that this cause cannot be won in fragments, that we have to get together and understand that even though we might have differences, that we're more alike than not, and help each other. And I think sometimes there's been jealousy, there's been gossip that, somebody gets ahead and, somebody else, oh, yeah, look at her, that can't be. I was like that when I was younger. That just can't be anymore. That can't, because it will never. Do you know how far we have gone backwards because of COVID? We are at 1980 levels in terms of women's employment. In January, they added 49,000 jobs, and everybody's like, yay, yay, we're adding jobs again, right? 275,000 women are still unemployed. Of those women, most of them are mothers that can't go back to work. there's just no opportunity for them to go back to work because there is no one to care for their children, and their children can't go back to school yet, or daycare. The daycare centers are closed. So we have a very big crisis in this country, and I just don't think it's going to be solved by 50% of the population, in fragments. Okay, career woman, mother, this, all looking at each other saying, well, you don't understand. That won't help. And so that's also something that I talk about a lot is let's just look at each other for what we are. And that is we're all women and we're all suffering on some level. Maybe it's not acute. Maybe it's not something that keeps us up at night, or maybe it is. I don't know. But whatever it is, we all suffer a little bit.
So how do you think that is going to change as we come out of this in June? Can we get back to where we were as far as that growth side to it, or do you think it's going to stay stunted for a while?
I think it will stay stunted for a while. All of the analysts are saying that it will stay stunted for a while. Many of the jobs that were held by women, mothers, in say customer service or in retail, or may never come back. And something will have to be done, definitely, because you can't have, and then look, I just in case anybody's wondering, I'm a Republican, but I have a heart. The fact is that you cannot have a society of haves and have-nots and have it run successfully. It just doesn't work, okay? And so the bottom line is that whoever is in power, we have to figure out a way to do retraining and to have some sort of employment insurance for the people that have had jobs eliminated. There's got to be something that is a safety net for them during these times. We've done it before, and as a country, we should be able to do it again. To me, it seems like a no-brainer, but we've had so much strife and so much arguing. It hasn't been able to get done.
No, I agree. And as I was saying, International Women's Day is coming up on the 8th. And one of the things I love about International Women's Day through all of this, hopefully it's seen as a time to celebrate. Absolutely, the challenges and everything you're talking about, we have to move forward. I like it because it's an opportunity to really embrace all those sort of successes. And maybe I'm a guy, but I'm saying this, maybe it's an opportunity to, in that light of success, talk about those challenges and what's actually going on right now, and hopefully find a way to put a plan in place to address that, right?
Exactly. Many of the things that happen, aren't obvious. They aren't things that, like we just talked about, the slamming and the body language and the things that the voice, these aren't things where a man is sitting there and going, oh, I could never promote this woman because she doesn't XYZ. This is an overall perception of the person, and this is an overall perception that they're getting because of a bias that they have that they don't even know they have. I don't see this as anybody intentionally trying to keep a segment of the population down. And in fact, I think most hiring managers will tell you that they're looking for women and minorities. They're actively looking. So there are issues in the pipeline. There are issues in how we train, how we educate girls. I mean, we have issues all the way down, to middle school. But and they're getting better. They are getting better, and I think there are some things you can celebrate. There are girls in robotics and girls doing very extraordinary things in STEM. But I would like to see a more broad-based, almost like returnships, right? Women that have been out of work for COVID, maybe they were raising their children and they're older now and they want to come back. I'd love to see us train them in cybersecurity. I'd love to see them become ethical hackers because they're very, they're used to collaborating. They're great at problem solving. We know some of the skills that they're they're fanatical about and they're great at the details. And, why not something like that? We have such a need in cybersecurity. We're never going to beat these guys with what we have right now. I mean, the nefarious individuals, never. It's just not enough. We're trying to hire, and you can't believe how hard it is to hire the people that do the actual work to protect you. I mean, I would hate to be a tiny company trying to protect myself. At least, we have some kind of a reputation in cybersecurity. I can't even imagine if I was a hospital in West Bend or,
Right.
South Bend or whatever. I'm in Indiana. I don't even know what West Bend is. I guess that's a coffee maker. Or
South Bend is because of Notre Dame, but okay.
Yeah, there's a South Bend. I think there's a South Bend. But the point is that why not training these women? Why not have your own little farm team you get going, right?
Do you see that? I'm curious. By the way, you have a book that talks a little bit about it. Maybe it's a chance to talk a little bit about that. And then maybe even tie in what you see at the C-suite level on recognition of this, so that it's not just one woman's fight, right? It's everybody. We're the allies in this, right?
Yeah. Right. No, I think a lot of people are talking about it. There are organizations, lots of women's organizations that are talking about doing this. There are organizations that do training that offer scholarships, like EC Council for women and girls in STEM. There are a lot of things going on. I don't want it to sound like nothing is happening and that it's bleak, but I think a lot more could be going on. The first book that you probably are referencing is the one that Cheryl O'Donoghue wrote, which talked about my career and being a woman in tech. And I do talk about this, and I talk about how, we could do so much more. My book that I actually wrote a chapter in that was just published is about my experience through the pandemic and what it's a very personal story about how I actually it's called My Chapter. There was 24 others that wrote chapters. It's an anthology of 25 leading through the pandemic. And my chapter is called From 5-Star Hotels to 5 Hours of Zoom. And what I'm talking about in this is about how the pandemic and coming off the road caused me a little bit of an existential crisis and put me into a bit of a depression, and what I had to do to change my life. And it was truly a gift to me, although I wouldn't wish it on anyone, to take that time and not travel and focus on the things that matter. Sitting still and understanding that in order to get ahead, you sometimes have to sit still or take a step backwards and really hear what's going on. This was not something that I was familiar with. I was a ready, fire, aim gal, right? And I moved fast. And that's all I knew how to do. And I mean, how lucky am I at this point in my life to figure this out? Very, very fortunate. But it took a crisis to do it. They say you don't change unless you have significant amount of pain, and it was there. So that's what this book's about, My Chapter.
Well, and I think that goes across all genders, right? I think I can relate to that. I think anybody who's listening who has been traveling a lot could listen to that. I do think that's interesting in terms of just because you travel a lot doesn't mean you were always fast moving. I think you take that combination together. And I think I felt very much the same way. A lot of people could relate to that. You were kind of thinking, yeah, this is a crisis. And how do we get through this regardless of whether you're a man or a woman?
I think that, mine wasn't just about the travel. I think the not traveling forced me to sit still and have to see things. What I did, just me personally, is that traveling and moving fast in life allowed me to kind of surface everything, right? Not have to go too deep on any one subject. And while this can get you far in some circles, it can't get you all the way. I was lacking a strategic thinking gene, I would say. I mean, that I guess I had it. I hadn't exercised it very well. I also was lacking a specific kind of empathy for others when I was moving fast. I was just boom, 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 and my own pain has helped me to understand everybody else's a little bit better, and I think it's just made me just a much better manager, better leader. It doesn't make me softer. It doesn't make me less tough in that I still expect. I have the same expectations. We have the same accountability. It's just that I'm really listening. I'm really, present. And I don't think unless you're present, you really can get what the person is saying to you. And I see this in all aspects of my life, which, by the way, every single aspect of my life has improved, except for, having to wear a mask and having people die that I've loved and, having to have people around me sick. I mean, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But for me, having the opportunity to do this, what I would call extreme self-care, was very useful.
I think a lot of people could take that lesson. I think a lot of people, and I know that as I've gotten older, I've gotten a little bit better at it. But I remember someone calling me out. I was with them, and they literally said, they turned to me and said, "You've already left. We're still talking, and you've already left." And this was an employee of mine, and I was in such a hurry. And this is before any of this, right?
Right.
To get through that, and as you said, sort of skim over it. That was a real call out for me and helped me quite a lot. I'm not saying I'm perfect at that by any means, but I sure went through that as well. I think all that makes you a better leader. And I think it all ties into success in what you're doing in the channel. And by the way, listeners, we're going to get back to driving revenue in another podcast. I think this podcast is about women in the channel and how you face your challenges in this current time. I think those are really worthwhile topics. And it's kind of funny, Tina, we didn't plan on going down this path, but I think it's a good path. So look, why don't we just wrap this up with, look, you have a lot of sage advice to share. And I know that I think you enjoy that too. In being a mentor, right? I'm pretty sure.
I love it. I love it. I love talking to my girls. Well,
I think you should be talking to some guys too, right?
Well, by the way, since the book came out, I've had men reach out to me and thank me for writing my chapter, and men that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's been cool.
That is really cool. I'm sort of on this ally trip piece, right?
Yeah.
Because I've got so many powerful women that I've sort of taken for granted. And I'll just wrap up my story. Is that because the blessing that my parents gave me is no biases, gender or race or anything. It was the coolest gift they could ever give me. The problem I have sometimes, and I think other men have it too, we stop even thinking about it. Like, I'm sorry, you're a woman. I don't really think of you as a woman. I think of you as Tina Gravel, who does this. The challenge is sometimes I forget what things that you're talking about. All these real challenges are going on. I'm saying, oh, this is cool. I've got all these power women I engage with. Life is fine. It's not in a lot of ways. And we need to be, I'm trying to figure out how to be more of an ally in coming off in the right way to do that. And sometimes that's not so easy.
It is. And I find your challenge with minority women, because I don't know what it's like to be them.
Yeah.
I want to know so that I can better help, because I don't know what to do to help them. And they have it way worse than I've had it. Right. And so I'm with you. It's not easy.
So what's the best way for people to get connected with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. It says Illinois, Tina Gravel, Illinois. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter, tgravel, @tgravel. I can be reached at appgate.com or tinagravel.com, any of these places. And I am always delighted to hear from someone that has heard from a podcast or a webinar that I've participated in. It's always the most rewarding part of doing these things. So please reach out if you want to.
Tina, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your honesty and going through what you've done and what's happened to you in your personal life. I appreciate it. I think our listeners will appreciate it as well. So listeners, thank you for joining us. As usual, if you have any questions or input, please feel free to email us at channeledge@360insights.com. And if you enjoy this, listeners, please do share this with your compatriots and feel free to find us and download us at Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Google, wherever you find your great content. We greatly appreciate it. So Tina, thanks again. Listeners, thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Channel Edge, brought to you by 360 Insights, the channel success platform. Subscribe now on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play, and you'll always be the first to access new episodes where channel leaders share success strategies, best practices, and emerging trends. For bookings, feedback, questions, or comments, feel free to email us at channeledge@360insights.com.